InfluxDB Cloud 2.0 is the first serverless time series platform as a service. Free to start and easy to use, InfluxDB Cloud 2.0 is the most powerful time series platform purpose-built with elastic scalability to meet your demanding requirements for today's time-sensitive workloads. Hey, we're here for a demo today with InfluxData. My guest is Chris Churilo, Director of Product Marketing at InfluxDB. Hi, Chris.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I am great. Our topic is a review of the new InfluxData Cloud 2.0. Chris, let's get right into it. What's new in Influx Cloud 2.0?
You know, there's a lot of really great things about InfluxDB Cloud 2.0. I think first and foremost, we have this belief that, we have this term that Paul Dix, our CTO, coined a couple years ago called time to awesome. And not only does it sound very intriguing and very cool, it actually is really important to us as we're developing product. And the essence of it is that we want to make sure that developers can get up and running and using tools that are going to be really important to their development work as quick as possible. And we don't want people to have to futz around with all these configuration files, try to figure out how to get started. We feel that there's already enough work that they had to do with their just going through the backlog or developing new capabilities. The last thing they want to do with any of the tools that they want to incorporate is have to deal with it. And so with this 2.0 product, we really focus on making sure that people can get up and running, start collecting time series data, which is very important to their apps, and not have to think about it. In addition to that, the other part of the coin is I can get the tick stack, or the former tick stack, as we call it, the InfluxDB products up and running, but then I have to think about where do I put it? Where do I store it? How much storage do I need? How much compute do I need? So it's a lot of thinking that I have to do, and I might not be able to predict what that's going to look like because I haven't built out all my capabilities in my application. And so we changed the whole model with InfluxDB Cloud so that you don't have to think about it. So it'll grow with you. So in the previous incarnation of the product, you had to pick a particular size and then commit to that. And if you wanted to upgrade because all of a sudden you're doing a lot more queries or you're adding a lot more data, you might need to upgrade. In this particular new version, you don't have to think about that up front. What you can do is you just start using it, start looking at what your application is actually doing, and then we'll grow with the application. And of course, over time, if you want to make bigger commitments because you want steeper discounts, it's all possible. So some pretty big changes for us with this new version of the cloud.
Awesome. Well, let's take a look.
All right. So I want to just make sure that we get everybody who's on here on the same page. So what we'll start off with is just a little bit of an overview of what InfluxDB is all about. And what we are is a time series database. We have our roots in open source. We have super popular projects. You can see that on GitHub. And we are a database that's purpose-built for time series data. And if you think about time series data, the most simple definition of time series data is you have a timestamp and a value. And the reason you're collecting this information is you want to understand the change over time of that particular value. So I want to understand the temperature of my house over the course of 24 hours. I want to understand what the load of my app is putting onto my infrastructure over the course of the last 10 minutes, because I know that I'm about to have a sale and I'm expecting a lot of people to come onto my app. I want to understand how well my wind turbines are working. So I want to understand things like blade rotation or how much energy is being produced. All of that is some kind of value and a timestamp, and I'm watching that over time. So that's all time series data. And if you think about it, we've been looking at time series data forever. And we've been trying to shove it into spreadsheets or shove it into relational databases. And we had to do a lot of work in order to make that data be successful for us. And so what has happened over time is people came up with the idea of, hey, why don't we just treat this special kind of data very specially, and let's start to think about the characteristics of it, and let's develop databases that can really work efficiently with time series data. And that's where this whole category of time series databases were born. But you can use it in everyday life. So it's pretty cool stuff. And we wanted to make sure that it could be something that every developer could take advantage of. Because if you think about the work that you're doing with your applications or the infrastructure you're building or any kind of SaaS solution you're building, we want to make sure that our products are super fast. Our customers are really satisfied with the service we're providing, which means we have to track the data to prove that everything is going really well. So specifically InfluxDB Cloud, it's a database as a service. Oh, I forgot to mention a really important thing. It's actually free to start, so no credit card necessary. In fact, this free tier is like free forever. So the cool thing is for all of us that want to just get started, you just start when you're ready. Open up an account, start using it, start tracking the temperature of your pool, and off you go. But you don't have to worry about the clock ticking down and your 14-day trial is about to expire. Because we've noticed that a lot of people, myself included, sometimes we don't get to those little projects as quickly as we wanted. So we want to make this really simple for our users. So free to start, really simple to use. It's serverless. And what we mean about serverless is that you don't have to think about what your storage or what compute you actually need up front, because we're going to scale with you. And like I mentioned, fastest time to awesome is really important to us. You don't really have to install anything on the application side. You do need to install some Telegraph plugins, and that's because those are the collector agents that are going to go out to your infrastructure or to your IoT devices to be able to start to collect the time series data that's going to allow you to understand performance.
What are you seeing people use this for in the free version?
It's really fun. Like, people are so clever. There are so many people that use it for things like monitoring the temperature of their barbecue. There are these incredible thermometers that are out there. You can send all this information to your smartphone, or there's actually a new Telegraph plugin that's actually supporting some of these thermometers. So you can do that. We have a lot of people monitoring their pool. A lot of people monitoring the temperature throughout their house. You can monitor your networks in your house as well and try to determine which kid in the house is actually consuming most of the bandwidth.
Yeah.
Which is always a lot of fun, right? So lots of really fun ways that we can use this around the house. And then people, I think a lot of developers we just have like servers lying around in the garage or in some closets. We're always doing something with those things. So people like to just monitor the infrastructure they have in the house as well. So there's plenty of stuff that you can monitor at home.
Cool.
So yeah, as I mentioned, it's all about this whole concept of elastic scalability. Want to be able to expand with you. Support on multiple different clouds. We know that AWS isn't the only one that people are interested in. And right now, that's the only one we support. But soon, we will be supporting GCP. And that's coming within weeks. And then also, we made some commitments to Microsoft as well. But the cool thing is it's about gathering the data, but then looking into that data to try to figure out what's going on in your environment. So there's a lot of insights that you can get with it. We have a new query language that we'll briefly talk about in the demo. That's a part of InfluxDB Cloud. And what the demo I'm going to show you is going to be really kind of a point-click kind of interface. But the thing to keep in mind is you don't have to point and click. I mean, that's just so you can get an understanding of what is capable of. But you could actually use any of the APIs that we have, and you could actually have your applications, doing all the pointing and clicking, if you will, on your behalf. So you can collect the data, start to get the insights, and then actually act on those insights. So that's just a brief overview of our cloud product. And in addition to, the great features that you get with InfluxDB, being able to store and actually do something with time series database. On the cloud side, we also made sure that we built out the whole UI so that it's going to be really quick to understand what you need to do to get started. So you start collecting the data, and you'll see this in the UI. You can then set, alerts and triggers, and then you can, build some dashboards and, start to really dig into that data. So we make sure that those things are going to be really simple for you to use. Of course, it's always going to be available. It's going to be durable. We don't want to lose any of that data because a lot of our users, outside of using it for their home projects, when they are using it at work, they're monitoring solutions that are just mission critical to the business. And what some of the users are planning to do with InfluxDB is making sure that all that infrastructure is up and running so they can offer really great SLAs to their customers, which means we better be even more rock solid if we're going to be used to monitor the monitoring solution, if you will. And then, of course, the other really important services, making sure that, it's secure. We have a number of access controls put in place so that your users can be able to interface with the data that's being collected in a very secure fashion and also in a very fast manner. And then any kind of support, we have a lot of different support options for our users, whether they want just the standard community support or if they want something that's a lot more hands-on. We also have, phone, email support, and also a customer success team. And all of this is sitting on top of this fantastic time series database called InfluxDB. And as I mentioned, currently in AWS and soon coming on GCP and Azure. The other thing that we have been working on is that as a time series database, I always think of it as it's like a blank sheet of paper. You can do almost anything with it. And I think that's really great. But we also realize that some people need a little bit more inspiration than just, saying, hey, here's a blank piece of paper, off you go. And so we've started to develop a set of composable solutions that's going to be very specific to certain types of monitoring activities. And in this picture, you can see a couple of different examples. You can do network monitoring, and this could be, whether it's at home or at your data centers or even virtual networks. Being able to make sure, what did one of our users say? Being able to make sure that the network is not guilty, right? Because every time things are slow, everyone blames the network. And so network monitoring really helps to make sure that that network actually is innocent, because a lot of times the network is innocent. There's also a lot of people that do a lot of monitoring of a number of equipment in factories or in the field, if there's energy produced in solar panels, et cetera. Those things have sensors on them, and so they collect that information. And so we've also built some solutions around that. And of course, infrastructure monitoring, whether it's all the stacks in your physical data center or in your cloud environments, everything needs to be monitored. In fact, there's probably even more things that need to be checked with the adoption of VMs and containers and microservers and whatnot. So trying to make these things a little bit easier so that there's a nice starting point for people, and then you can go in and customize the solution as you need. So that's just a little bit. Oh, and then finally, Flux, which is our new query language. We wanted to make sure that we can make this so that it's going to really allow you to do more than just look at InfluxDB stored time series data. We recognize that there are situations where you might want to augment that data with data that's stored in a relational database. Maybe it's customer information or maybe information about some orders that they had. And so we really want to make sure that it can be multi-data sourced. So you can bring all these different data sources together in a very simple language so you can get even more insights.
What additional capabilities does that offer by being able to use Flux?
So, it's I feel like our previous language was a little bit too tight, and it was really only allowing you to do. It's pretty powerful. You could definitely do all kinds of queries on the data. You definitely can group things by certain time buckets. You could definitely do a bunch of different functions on the data. But two of the biggest features that it was lacking was one. People wanted to be able to do math across measurements. So you collect a set of time series and another set of time series, and you want to be able to do a very easy compare between the two time series. And that was missing. So let me give a really simple example. You have a water treatment system, and you have a filter, and the water is going through the filter so it can get rid of any kind of particles that might be in the water. And unfortunately, this water filter is not in a place that's easily accessible. So it's not that I can go and look at it to see, does it need to get replaced? Is it doing its job, et cetera? So what I might do is I might set up two different sensors. I'll set up a sensor in front of the water filter and behind the water filter. And I'm going to measure the water pressure. And so as the water is flowing through the pipe and through the filter, when the filter is clean, the water pressure between the two points of data that we're collecting should be pretty close to the same, right? Because there's nothing that's impairing the water from flowing through the filter. Maybe just a tiny, tiny difference. But as the filter starts to collect all the particles from the water that's going through it, then all of a sudden the filter is getting a little bit dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. And so then the flow is going to change on the output side. So all I want to be able to do is start to look at both of those measurements over time and just, just subtract them to start to understand is the difference between the two sensors very dramatic? And if it is, then that's a really good indicator for me to take that filter out and replace it. And that's one of the great things that Flux can do super easily that we couldn't do before. And I think a lot of our users, they've already been playing with many, alpha and beta versions of Flux, and they've already come up with super great use cases like the one I just mentioned. And then the second thing is, being able to grab data from, multiple different sources. And so, time series data is important because it's going to tell you the change over time of whatever I'm measuring. But sometimes I need a little more context. Sometimes maybe I'm measuring the performance of a particular set of web pages, and I have a collection of user information because they've shopped on my website before, and they've been cookied and whatnot. And maybe I just want to try to understand, maybe this particular set of users are having more problems about the performance of my website than the rest of the people. Or maybe I'm monitoring the performance of I'm building some kind of product in a factory, and I want to make sure that Alex, you said that you wanted me to build or cook 5,000 tons of Christmas cookies, and you want them by October 1st. And so I want to be able to look at that order information, look at the date that they are supposed to be delivered to you, and then I'm going to look at all the details in my factory that are going to tell me, yeah, you're going to make that deadline or you're not. Looks like that oven is about to die. Looks like you don't have enough flour to make those cookies. All the information that I would have in my factory, I can then map it against what my expectation is. So there's some pretty powerful things that people can start to do so that we can become even more efficient in our day-to-day operations. All right, should we go to the fun part?
Yes.
Okay, so to get started, it's super easy. You just go to our website and you can just hit the Get InfluxDB, and you can just go to, it says Cloud, Open Source, or Enterprise. But all you have to do is just start with the cloud, and just like any kind of a sign up, just put in your information. But the thing that is important to notice is we're not asking for any kind of credit card information. So with this free version, you can set up 2 databases that we call buckets. You can create 5 dashboards. You can also create some alerts that we'll actually look at in just a minute. So it's enough definitely to get started and start monitoring anything that you have around the house. So let's just assume that we got started here. And once I've logged in, oh, look, it says Konnichiwa, Chris Churilo. So hello, Chris Churilo. Welcome to InfluxDB Cloud. And you can see we really made it very, very simple. Look at this. Step 1, load your data. Step 2, build a dashboard. Step 3, set up alerting. Really, really easy to understand what I need to do first. So what I would first recommend that anybody do is let's just start collecting data from your laptop, because that's like the easiest thing that you can do. And what you can do is you just go into, let me just go back, make sure everyone saw that. I click on this big tile called Load Your Data. I'm asked to set up a Telegraph plugin. Remember, Telegraph is one of the ways that you can bring data into InfluxDB. It's a collector agent, and we just happen to have one that collects system stats. And all we have to do is create, click on the Create Configuration button. And if at any time I have any questions, the nice thing is the team really did a good job as making sure that there's documentation scattered throughout the user interface. So if I don't really know what Telegraph is, I can easily go in and just look at this little hint, or I can just start going deeper into a guide about Telegraph. So we'll just assume that I know what it is, and voila, you can see now even more really nice visuals to let you know what I might want to collect data on. So I can do system metrics, Stalker, a bunch of things that are very familiar to many people who are developing all kinds of applications. So we'll just simply pick system. I hit continue. I just then name the configuration, whatever I want. Usually I should name it something better than this, but you can see this guy is actually collecting information from various plugins that are going to tell me things about my laptop, my CPU, my disk use. These are really easy, obvious things to gain an understanding of how my laptop's doing, right? And I can put some description. And then I can create my configuration. And then, we have this lovely API token that I just have to enter into the terminal. And don't worry, I know everyone can see this, and this is going to be forever recorded. I'll definitely get a new token when I start using this the next time. So if you get this, that's okay. And then I just start Telegraph by just throwing this information into my terminal, and off you go. Super simple. So just because I'm always worried about the demo gods, I actually did configure this plugin right before our chat today. So you can see I actually called it My System Stats, just because I wasn't sure.
Right.
Sometimes I do it and it just doesn't work. So all of a sudden it's actually already working in the background. I even can show you, I threw in the information that we gathered from the UI. Everything's running, and to prove it, we can go into something called Data Explorer, and I can go into this thing called Bucket that I had named earlier. That's actually the database that I'm collecting the system metrics in, and it's super easy. Look at this. I just select CPU. I can just pick whatever I want to, how much system usage, CPU total, and then I hit submit, and there you go. I didn't do anything, right? Just clicking around, and already I'm starting to collect information about what's happening with my laptop here. And the thing that's really cool is, we talked about this new query language called Flux. And so what I can do is I can actually learn with the UI. So this thing is actually doing a query for us, but all I did was a bunch of clicking. But if I go into the script editor, I can actually see what Flux looks like. And for me, this is a much easier way to learn, right? Because I'm like, I know what I just did. I said I was collecting some information from this database called Bucket. I didn't really set a time range, but I could see there's ways I could set some kind of a time range, but I can see it here. Range, yeah. And there's the start and the stop of the time range. And I remember clicking on something called CPU. Okay, so I'm filtering from that. And then I remember clicking on something called usage system and then CPU total. Hey, I think I have a pretty good idea of how to use this kind of filtering capability. And all I did was just kind of click around. And I feel this is much faster than reading any kind of documentation. And so I can exit the query builder. I can do even more. Maybe I want to put in an aggregate function. I want to do a mean. And I can go back to the query builder and see, oh, how did that work? Oh, here we go. It added it to the end. All right, so I now have a function that's checking a window period, every whatever this period is, and gathering the mean.
You could do this really for anything. I mean, it could be done to, for instance, monitor pages to a website over a period of time, correct?
That's right. You can do page loads. You can do how long people, sat in their shopping cart. Everything that matters. We have all kinds of different use cases. We have some really great blogs. So Wayfair is a perfect example. They're about to come up to a time that's really sensitive for them. They all have, I think it's all hands on deck in the month of November, because it turns out we do a lot of shopping on these furniture websites during that time, getting prepared for the holidays. So we're buying all these pillows and blankets and whatnot for our family that's coming to visit. And so they constantly have to be able to monitor almost all the flows that they can imagine. So I think they monitor about 2 million real user metrics every single day. And they need to make sure that they can ensure that they have a very performant retail site. But they also want to be able to allow their marketing team to constantly add any kind of promotions or campaigns or new products. And they also don't want to stop the dev team from adding more capabilities. So all those changes, they need to monitor a lot of stuff, and it's really important to their business.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have my nice little dashboard. You saw how we can easily make any kind of changes to it. I can also review the raw data if I choose to. And you can see it's kind of in this nice little table format. So it's pretty easy for me to be able to see, what's going on. So it's just a really nice way to be able to understand like the data that's coming in to my system. And you saw me, I didn't do much work. So anyone can kind of get started playing with this and start understanding what's going on with their metrics. And you can create a number of different dashboards. So that was just a dashboard that I very quickly created for my CPU. But if I go to this dashboard icon, There's also, I can create a brand new dashboard. I can import dashboards. Or if I have dashboards that I think are pretty cool, I can also create templates. And these are really useful if you want to be able to share them with your teammates, or if you have a really nice dashboard, you can even share it with the community. So you can just, pick whatever data collection that you want to have, and start to build out those the little tiles, and use any of the widgets, and then save it, and then other people will be able to then upload them, especially if you've done some really creative, cool stuff. Okay, so we've collected data, we created a dashboard, and now very simply what I can do is I can then set some thresholds, and then I can send alerts to myself. So one of the simplest notification endpoints that you can add to InfluxDB is you could just set up messaging being sent to Slack. And I've actually already done that. Really simple to do. You just have to have a Slack workspace, create a little app, and make sure that you set up webhooks. There's a little URL you grab, and you just pop it in here. So I've already set that up. And because I use this, I didn't want to share it with you guys. Sorry. So I set up where I want to send my notifications. And then the first thing that I do is I want to take a look at something that we've called a check. And let's just go ahead and create a new check. And what we can do is we can go back to that same database, pick CPU again, just because we're used to it. And then I can just, set various kinds of thresholds that I want to set. So I name this check. So how is my CPU usage? I can, schedule it, whatever time, every 5 seconds, whatever time I think is appropriate. I can also, this is what the message is going to be. So it's really simple to make any changes to it. But then I can also set various thresholds. So I can say, if the value is set to 20, then it's going to be red or critical. I can set my warning at maybe 15, all right, etc. Oops, I can set that up. Let me just go back to this. Go back to this other one. Same idea. I set that up. I just came up with different numbers. But what's kind of cool is that when you set these different thresholds, I can actually move them. So what typically happens with me is these are set really high and they don't trigger anything. But then I can see this data as it's coming in, and I can start to say, oh, well, actually, maybe, my warning should be somewhere around here. And I can see, oh, that number is actually 3.5. So it'll actually change the value for me automatically. If you remember when we were setting up manually, it was set to 20, and that was going to be way beyond, setting any kind of threshold. So nothing will get triggered. Mm-hmm. So I can, easily add more, thresholds. I save it. And then the last thing I just have to do is then I just have to create a notification rule. And so in this particular case, I can create a notification rule. I can schedule it, whatever entry I want. And then I can say that, the condition is when my status is equal to critical, then I'm going to send this message over to, in this particular case, my Slack channel. And I can just continue to build on all the various conditions that I might want to have. And then to make sure that it's working, all we need to do is in each of these instances, there's this nice, cute little eye icon. We select on that and we can view the history. So we can actually see for this status check that I had set up, is it actually triggering? And you can see it's triggering for 3 different levels, okay, crit, and warn. So I know that these things are actually working. And I can do the same with the notification too. So I can see, is this actually sending to Slack any kind of notification? And it looks like because I set up the notification to only send critical level alerts to Slack, then that's being sent. And then I can also look at my Slack channel. You can see I've been just spamming the heck out of myself.
Right. This comes down to the management aspect of it that you really need to define by just, using the time series database.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, because the way we've set this up, you can actually really streamline this, right? So you can set up a whole bunch of different checks, but you can even set it up so that people don't get spam. Because I think one of the things that monitoring solutions are often guilty of, and it's because of how we set them up, is that we get way too many notifications and then we start to ignore them because we're so overwhelmed. And then what do? We shut them off. And that's just not a good thing to do, right? You just want to be able to go back and go, okay, then maybe these thresholds are too strict or they're too lenient, and let's make some changes that way. And then maybe I want to send notifications to different groups of people based on the different criteria that I set. So this allows you to have that flexibility in setting up your notifications. And with the previous versions, we didn't have this kind of flexibility. We were a little bit too narrow in the definition of the monitoring and alert. So, it would be like you would get everything or I would get everything. And that's not always how we work, right? I might be only needing to understand when things are really critical. And maybe you only need to understand when things are in that warning state, but maybe it's only for the storage layer, right? We all have different responsibilities. And so this gives you that kind of flexibility. So you can see it's just really easy. I mean, how long did this take? It didn't take any time at all for you to get, up and running. It's a really nice way to start to understand the query language. And then what's fun is as you're building out these dashboards, you can start to make it your own, right? So here's a view of the dashboard that I have. It's easy to be able to customize it. I can, move these little panels around. I can make them bigger. I can change the color. People get really tied to these kinds of things, right? Because our way is always better.
Right.
But it just makes it, a ton of fun. So really simple to get started. And this is what I mean by, developer happiness or time to awesome. You have all this data now at your fingertips. Imagine if this is data about, some particular function in your application that you're building. You can now start to look at it. You can start to, tweak it. You can start making some changes to your apps so that you can make your customers really happy.
And that's a cost saver too.
It is definitely a cost saver. And it's also peace of mind for you as a developer, right? If you can monitor how well your piece of code is doing, your teammates appreciate that too. They like to know that, hey, you're not putting something into prod that hasn't been fully tested or understood from a performance perspective.
Yeah, because that can create all kinds of other issues and such.
Oh yeah, who hasn't done that, right? We throw something in the prod, everybody yells at us. But just to, kind of recap that demo, it's really about, we have over 200 Telegraph plugins that are already, most of them created by the community. So you have a lot of different options for bringing data in. We do also have that really nice configuration builder that we took a look at. We also have a set of client libraries if you prefer to bring in data about your applications that way. So you name it, Java, Python, C#, et cetera, et cetera. It's all part of our stack. You saw it was really easy to look at the data. It's really easy to start to understand how Flux works. And you can reuse and share these dashboards with your coworkers, with your community. Hey, maybe even your kids, because I know some of your kids are probably more technical than most. And then finally, it's really simple to set up any kind of monitoring and alerting so that you can then make things a little bit better for your family, for your friends, or your customers.
It really seems to have, again, kind of the universal application when you combine time and data, right? I mean,
That's
it really
right.
applies to your life and your work.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And it's just a lot of fun. The more we dig into it, then the more we understand stuff. And, I feel like it helps us to get rid of folklore, which seems to be still prevalent. Why something is really slow because, some story we made up. This helps us to prove that it's actually something else, or it's something, simpler, or maybe it's more complicated, but it's all based on data.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Absolutely. It's always fun.
Yeah, about InfluxDB Cloud 2.0. We covered a lot of ground.
Excellent. Well, I hope you'll start using it as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a try.
Excellent. And we'll see some really cool dashboards from you.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
InfluxDB Cloud 2.0 is the first serverless time series platform as a service. Free to start and easy to use, InfluxDB Cloud 2.0 is the most powerful time series platform purpose-built with elastic scalability to meet your demanding requirements for today's time-sensitive workloads.